when you look at your career, you have to wake up to the fact that you're heading into the most difficult career management moment in the history of civilization. I want to talk to you about the future of work and what's going to happen with your career, what's going to happen with jobs in the market. Now, you don't need to be an economist or a scientist or a computer engineer to start seeing what these trends are, okay? Go down to your local bank branch and remember when you were a child and you had to wait in the branch for an hour and a half with your parents as they waited to see the teller get their banking done. Today, the branches are empty because most of the people are doing their transactions online. In fact, the amount of people that you need to actually run these new digital branches are 2 or 3 people at max, whereas before you had 30+ people to run that branch. We've all heard the stories of the autonomous electric vehicles and how, we will not have people driving these cars. That same technology with blockchain and everything else that's happening will be applied to the logistics industry. So you'll have cargo being shipped from one city through 8 different cities around the world, and it will be run by computers. They will have digital wallets to do the transactions. The cranes and the ports and the shipyards will be run by robots. You now have computers and robots which are building houses. They are 3D printing houses, very minimal human impact. So you now have these jobs where the humans are being removed from running the ports, from driving the boats, from driving the cars, from running the construction sites. Even if you just go down to your local grocery store, you will see the traditional cashier on the left, you'll see the automated checkout on the right. This trend is very apparent now, but if you go back 100 years and just look at what's been happening with wages and employment over the last 100 years, you'll start to see from the 1900s until about the 1970s, as productivity increased, wages increased. Productivity increased, wages increased. In the 70s, technology comes into the workplace, into the factories, and you start to see productivity going up and wages going flat or decreasing over time. And so when you start to plot this trend out, you clearly see that productivity is increasing dramatically, but the amount of people or the input of human labor is becoming less relevant. And that's what the capitalist system will do, is it's designed to look at what are the inputs of productivity and how do we reduce those. So if we're buying raw material, we need steel for our steel mill. How do we get steel at the cheapest possible price? If we can get it for free, even better. So you have scrap metal, you have so many different ways. What are they doing? So the whole focus is reducing that cost position. Human labor is one of those cost elements. So the whole system over the last how many 100 years is really focused on reducing the input of human labor down to nothing. And so as we move forward, this trend is being applied to your career. And this is a fact. You can hire an engineer today for cheaper than you could 100 years ago. You could get a doctor today for cheaper than you could 100 years ago. You can get an accountant for cheaper. In fact, you have accounting software that's replacing entire accounting departments. So a lot of these traditional professions are under dramatic market equity compression. They're really pushing the value of these professions down. So when you look at your career, you have to wake up to the fact that you're heading into the most difficult career management moment in the history of civilization. In the next 10 to 15 years, it is going to be the most difficult job market that's ever been seen. And this is being masked. Why? Because when you look at what I just said, productivity is going up. So the companies are actually making more money, more profit. So when you look at the stock market, why do we feel this gut that something's not right? So you look at the stock markets, you go to Bloomberg, you go to CNN, they're telling you that the economy is doing great and that unemployment is at an all-time low. And you're saying, well, it doesn't feel that way because when I walk the streets, you see the homeless people, you see the poverty, you have friends who've lost their jobs. You can feel that this thing is coming undone. And what's actually happening is that if for the first time in history, increased revenue and increased net profit is being attached to a decrease in net new job growth. And so you're saying, well, Shane, that can't be true because when we go on the news, you can actually hear them stating that the employment rate is dropping. How is that employment rate being calculated? You need to ask yourself. The employment rate is being calculated by a phone survey of 60,000 households in the United States, and anybody who has been looking for a job for more than 6 months is not included in the survey. So if you've been unemployed for 1 year, you're not included in the unemployment statistic. So there's obviously a major issue with the way they're calculating the unemployment rate, and it's specifically being calculated in a way that doesn't include people whose jobs have been completely annihilated by these trends. So it's being fabricated as a story that's being fabricated to you so you don't realize exactly what's happening. So as you fast forward, your job is going to be at risk. Your family is at risk. You need to step up the amount of focus you have on managing your career immediately. And you need to move yourself out of the 60th percentile. So all those jobs that are in the 60th percentile and below, you're seeing salary compression on. So any position today you can hire for cheaper than you could yesterday, unless they're in the top 1%, top 5%. The top 3% of jobs are actually seeing dramatic salary increases. So if you're a chief executive officer, if you're a chief marketing officer, if you're a chief information officer, if you're a chief security officer, these jobs are now going to see 100%, 200%, even more, 300% possible growth. Because these companies now are global entities, the channels of distribution, the way these businesses run are so complex that the high-skilled jobs are seeing high growth, very high growth. So if you're, for example, a mobile application programmer, you will see increase in your salary. But for the regular blue-collar factory workers, the construction workers, for the taxi drivers, for all this bottom end of the economy, you are going to get wiped out. So you have to realize you're heading into the most difficult career management situation of the last 1,000 years. And the core question is, how are you going to manage this? And who's in your corner to help you?